So just a quick reminder, which everyone's doing a great job, we are social distancing the best we can with our masks, all those things to try to keep safe in our church. So thank you for doing that. And then also because of COVID, we're not passing around our offering basket. And so we are still doing online giving if that's the way you choose to want to give. So you can, either through Venmo or through Zelle, give that way if you so desire, okay? So today we are on our last section of the book of Exodus. We've gone through Genesis and Exodus this year, and today is officially in a relationship with God out of Exodus 32 and 34, okay? So I know that we have a mixed room of people as far as what generation you're from. We have some Gen Zers, some millennials, others who are different, older generation. So for me, I'm a millennial, okay? So I remember when I was dating, like in high school, like Facebook had just come out, okay? Some of you are like, wow, you're so old. Facebook had just come out when I was in high school, and you know how you can like change your relationship status, like in a relationship, or like it's complicated. I never understood that one. But you like made your relationship official by changing it on Facebook. Well, when So as I got older and as I started dating my husband, the new place to announce your relationship was Instagram, okay? So like when you put a picture on Instagram of you and you're that guy, like everyone knows, like you're official, okay? Or like Korean people, like they like change their Kakao profile picture. That's how you know like it's official, okay? So I remember my husband and I, we went to the same church in California. We've been going like new church for like 3.5 years. It's kind of funny because he's in the room. Normally he's not here when I share these stories, but he's here today. So I'm just kidding. So we were a lot of people like joked and were like, don't you guys like each other? And like, we're both like, no, we don't like each other, you know, and like all these things. But finally we started dating, and I remember I put a picture on Instagram, and like that's how we became official, right? It's like so cheesy and so stupid. And we went to church like the next weekend, and all of my kids were like, "You're dating Dua!" Like, oh my gosh, like it's official. And I'm like, you guys were right. And they're like, see, I was right, like all these things. So that was like the official start of our relationship. But as official as that is, I don't think we like really became like really deep in our relationship until we started sharing about like hard things. So we've been dating for a while, and I went to Korea to like meet his parents, and we were eating at this like 감자탕집 in Korea, and it was like really chill. Like we were just like talking about, you know, like random things. And I still remember, I don't know if he remembers, but like the conversation got super serious really fast. So we were just like joking about like our past relationships, like who we've been dating and stuff, which we knew about each other. But like what began as a really like lighthearted talk got to be like a super serious conversation in the middle of this like 감자탕집 in Korea. And like everyone's like around us, and I'm just like, we're talking about our past, like his past, my past, and like it gets really serious. And he was like, okay, I think we shouldn't talk about this anymore. Like we should talk about it privately somewhere else. I was like, okay. And then we're leaving that restaurant, and it starts pouring rain. And it's like a K-pop drama, or like a K-drama. It's pouring rain, and like I could hear the like sad music in the background. Like I'm sure it was somewhere. Like we got in the car, we started talking, and I started crying, I remember. And I felt like even though all of those past girlfriends, boyfriends were over, and like everything was done, when we were talking about it, I felt like those people were like coming back into our relationship. I felt like they were going to like threaten our relationship. That's how it felt like. It was like the weirdest thing. And I remember crying, and we talked and had a really good conversation. And after that is when I remember thinking, okay, now I think I can like really marry this guy. Like this is getting really serious. Like now it's official, because we had talked about some of the hard things and the hard things that like were a part of our relationship. And in a lot of ways, when I was preparing for this message this week, that's the story that came to my mind, because that's how it's like with God. Like when we give our lives to Jesus and say, I'm going to follow you, That's like you making it official on Instagram, or I don't know what Gen Zers do nowadays, okay? But like whatever it is, that's just the beginning. But as you build a relationship and as it gets more and more serious, the baggage and the things that we have in our heart, that's going to come out eventually. But as we like come before God, open and honest, and share those things and work through those things, that's the only way for the relationship to go deeper with God. What do you think it means to be a Christian? Like I want you to ask yourself right now, like ask yourself, answer the question, what does it mean to be a Christian for you? Think about it. What does it mean? Is it you know Jesus? Is it you go to church? Is it you're a really good person? You serve? Whatever your response may be, all of those things are part of what it's to be a Christian. But if I can tell you a really easy understanding of what it really means to be a Christian, it's this. It's having a real relationship with God and with Jesus. That's what it's like to be a Christian. It's relationship. It's not just, oh, I'm saved, or I'm a good enough person, or I try to go to church. It's not those things. Those things don't make you a Christian. Those things make you a human being. What makes you a Christian is that you have a living, vibrant, and real relationship with God. A real relationship with God. That's what makes you a Christian. Last week, we saw with the Israelites, as they've been set free from Egypt, waited 400 years to be free. And finally, they're free. That's like being saved. And yet, as they walk through the wilderness, we begin to see that God is doing something new. Being saved was day one. That was the first thing. But after day one, now what happens after that? They have to learn how to have a relationship with God. And so we saw them come to Mount Sinai, and God gave them the 10 Commandments, which we talked about last week. And last week we talked about how with any friendship, so I talked about like JD. When JD and I are friends, okay, if we're friends, can I talk smack about her behind her back? I mean, I could, but am I a really good friend? No. Can I like backstab her and treat her badly and then to her face like, oh, we're best friends, JD? She's like, okay. You know, is that a real friendship? No. And the same thing with God. Like with God, a relationship with him, there's certain things that are understood, certain boundaries that make sense. God gives us those boundaries to show us here, this is what it's like to have a relationship with me. And the first two things he said was, no other gods, and don't make an image. Don't make something to try to understand me, because you never saw me look like anything. I am beyond what you can ever understand. So that was part of what it was like to know God. But here we see so quickly how fast they fall away. Remember, God made covenant with them. He said, we're in this for the long run. Like, this is marriage for us. So for 40 days, Moses goes up the mountain after the 10 Commandments. And the Israelites are all waiting at the bottom of the mountain for 40 days. And here we see in Exodus 32 what happens. 40 days go by. And the Israelites are getting tired of waiting for Moses. So they said to Aaron, to his brother, come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses, like who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him. What did they want here? They wanted a God to go before them, to take them to the promised land, the place God promised he would take them. But they're tired of waiting for God's timing. They're tired of waiting for God to do what he said he would do. And so they take matters into their own hands. It's important to understand the motivation behind what they're doing. Because idolatry always starts with the human being with their need to control their own life, to find the quickest way to accomplish what they want to accomplish apart from God. Idolatry is about control. And so obviously they know God brought them out of Egypt, but they've conveniently forgotten that. Like, oh yeah, Moses did it. He's not doing his job. He's not even here. So can you make us a God for us? Their impatience reflects a lack of trust. When we have lack of trust in our hearts, that's a sure gateway to growing into idolatry, for sure, all of us. So what did they do? Aaron says, okay, give me all your gold earrings, because that's the gold they had on them. He melted it down and fashioned and formed a golden calf. It's like a young bull, like a cow, okay? And so they made this, and he said, look, here is the God that brought you out of Egypt, and they're worshiping this God. Now, here's the thing. The Israelites know that calf was obviously not there when they crossed the Red Sea, right? So in their minds, they're not worshiping a different God. They are worshiping God in their minds. But in their minds, they're worshiping God through this golden calf, through something they made with their own hands, through something they can see with their own eyes. They're worshiping God. In other words, this calf was an earthly representation of God, a way for them to see and know God. They tried to take God and put him in their box of how to understand. They tried to form him and make him into something that made sense in their human minds. And so God tells Moses, you better get down. You got to go. The people, they've messed up major. And so God says, I'm done. They broke my covenant within 40 days. It's like if I got married to my husband and 40 days later, I'm in bed with another person. That's a problem, okay? That's wrong, right? That's what the Israelites did, though. It's 40 days after they've said, we're going to live for you, we love you, God, and they're caught in bed with somebody else. That's what's happened right now. Okay, this is serious. And so God, within all of his rights, can say, I'm done with them. I'm done. But Moses asked God to have mercy. And in Exodus 32, verse 14, we see this. Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. People read this and they're like, why would God threaten them? That's so offensive. But they don't realize that the heart of what it says is that God had mercy. Within his rights, he totally could have broken the covenant and said, I'm done. You're done, I'm done, let's move on. Let's be clean with this. But he doesn't. He doesn't do that. He has mercy on them. It also goes to show that whenever God does something to discipline us, the whole heart of discipline is to bring us to repentance. God doesn't punish just to have fun in punishing you. He disciplines and brings us back so that we can repent. My kid, now he's 3, so he's trying to figure out his life and his boundaries in this world. So there have been many times, this last week, he's had I don't think it's hormonal because that's what girls do, but I don't know, he's had this weird thing where he's just drives us crazy right now. And one day, child, when you look at this recording, you will know that I love you, okay? But he drives us crazy. And so when we discipline him, we tell him and he always says this, he always goes, oh, Oma, I won't do it next time. I'm like, okay, I don't care about next time. What I care is that you realize that this time you did wrong, so next time you won't do it. And in my mind, I know when he's like, oh, I won't do it next time. I know he's gonna do it next time. I know that. But in my heart, I'm like, hopefully one day, as I keep disciplining you, you will learn to understand that what you did was wrong and not do it again. It's the same thing with us and God. If God's like, hey, I'm allowing this to happen to discipline you, to get your attention. It's not so that you get mad or angry or all these things. It's so that you come back to me. That's the heart of what God's wanting. And so Moses goes down. He's like, I got to go see for myself what's going on. So he goes down, sees what's happening, and then he throws down the 2 tablets that have the 10 Commandments, and he breaks them. Now, Moses does not have an anger issue. What this symbolizes is that the covenant is broken. What they did, they broke covenant with God. And so Moses destroys the calf. He crushes it down, makes them drink it. I don't know why he does that. But he says, okay, I'm going to go back to God and see what he wants to do because what you guys did was real bad. And so in Exodus 33:3, God has a response. He's like, I'm not going to destroy you. I told you I wouldn't. But what does he say? He says, okay, you guys go to the promised land. But I will not go with you. I won't go with you. God is getting to the heart of why they made this idol. Do they want God himself, or do they just want the promised land? In other words, God is asking, do you want relationship with me, or are you with me just for the benefits of what I can give you. I mean, if you go into a marriage, okay, if I was marrying my husband because of all the money he can give me, what am I? A gold digger, right? Like, all of you guys know that. Like, basically, God is saying, are you a gold digger or do you really want me? This is what he's saying. Ironically, they made this calf out of gold. But anyway, the point is, like, he's saying, do you want me or do you want just the good that I can give you? And for a lot of you, as a Christian, you will come to that point in your life when you will realize that God is asking you that question too. Do you want me or do you just want all the good things I can do for you? If you and I just want the good things that God can do for us, we're not going to follow God very long because we're going to realize not everything is good and happy when we follow God. And so Moses stands in the gap, and on behalf of the Israelites, he says this in verses 15 and 16. This is their response. If your presence will not go with me, do not bring us up from here. Isn't it with you going with us that makes us distinct and unique among all the other nations? For the first time, Israel has a good response. They're saying, look, God, we get that we did wrong. If you don't come with us, though, what's the point of us leaving? If you're not with us, we don't have anything. And for the first time, Israel realizes this. But when do they realize this? Do they realize this after the Red Sea? Do they realize this after the bread from heaven with manna? Do they realize this after the rock that was broken to give them water? No, they realize this after they failed. One of their greatest failures in totally breaking covenant with God, going against the top two commands. When they failed so utterly, that's when they realized how worthy God actually was. Isn't that interesting? So when you and I, when we fall on our faces and make a huge mistake and run away from God and do things that break his heart, actually that's an opportunity to understand God's love more. And so God says, okay, and they make new covenants, new tablets of stone to represent that the covenant has been made again. It's like when two people get married and they have a really rough marriage and then everything goes better and they renew their vows. It's like that concept. Israel is renewing their vows with God. And the funny thing is, after this moment of their failure, this is when God reveals the most important description of himself that we have in the Old Testament. This next verse I'm going to show you, this is the most important understanding of God that we have in the Old Testament. This is who God is, and he says it for himself. In Exodus 34, verse 6, we see this. God is saying to them, I am the Lord, the Lord. Whenever you see anything twice, it's really important. He's saying, I am the Lord, a God, merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. God did not reveal this part of his character before. He revealed this part of his character at the hardest point, after their greatest failure of totally falling away from God. Do you think that Israel understands now what it means that God is merciful? That concept of God as merciful is totally different for them now because they've experienced his mercy in a different way. God is slow to anger, abounding in love. He has great patience. When you see steadfast love, slow to anger, it means long suffering, like waiting a long time. I don't know about you, but growing up, who's the one that disciplined you? Who was the bad cop in the house? Okay, so for me, in my house, my mom disciplined my brother and I usually, and my dad didn't do it as much. But when my dad disciplined us, we knew it was really bad. Like we had crossed like 15 lines. Like it was really bad. Because I knew my dad was long suffering. My dad is very, very patient. He will wait, he will wait, he will wait. But then when he says something, game over. Like, we're screwed. Like, we're in big trouble. Like, God is so much more long suffering than my dad. Like, God is willing to wait and be patient. But we have to know that when God is patient with us, it's an invitation back to him. The story of the Israelites is here for us to read for a reason. We can say, Israelites are so stupid. Like, how could they fall away from God after all those things? That's the scary thing, is they're the ones that saw the Red Sea. They're the ones that saw bread coming down from heaven every morning. They're the ones that saw God fight for them and give them victory. They saw all of those things, and yet, within 40 days, after saying, "We love you alone, God," they fell so quickly away. Why do they do that? Because if they can fall away like that, we can fall away like that. See, idolatry is never about the idol itself. For the Israelites, idolatry was not about that golden calf. Idolatry was really about the Israelites trying to find security, comfort, and identity in something other than God. They didn't trust God's plan and his timing, and so they took matters into their own hands. Guys, idolatry is not about an idol. It's not about money. It's not about sex. It's not about those things. What it really is about is trying to find comfort, security, identity in something else other than God. That's what idolatry is. Idolatry is not just the bad things you think about. Idolatry can be the good things. We take the good things God has given us and we put them in the wrong order. We can take good things like gifts and talents and family and love and all these things God has given us. But if we put our identity, comfort, and security in those things and not in God, then those things have become our idols. So the question today is not if you have idols. When I was preparing this, I had to ask myself, what are my idols? Because guaranteed I have them then too. The question is not if you have idols. The question is, what are they? What are the idols of your life? What are the things you find comfort, security, and identity in before God? Because when we want to grow in deeper relationship with God, we have to get past that. We have to get past the other lovers in our lives that threaten that relationship. Just like with my husband, do you think I could have gotten married with him without knowing all of our past? No, we had to go through those things. We had to go through and let go of that baggage to get to a deeper place. Just like with you and God, the only way for you to go in deeper relationship is to realize what are the things that stand in the way. What are the idols that are right here that hinder me from going into deeper relationship with God? Can we have the praise team come up? And can we all stand? The only way for us is to confess of what those idols may be. Ask yourself right now, what are the idols in my heart? What are the things that I find comfort, security, and identity in other than God? Maybe, I don't know, it could be any of those things. But whatever that is, we are called to confess them, knowing that God is a God who's gracious, merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in love. When we know that we are safe with that person, then we can really share all the things that are embarrassing to share, that are shameful to share. But we share them because we know we're safe with that person. You are safe with God. He's a God who is gracious, slow to anger, merciful, and abounding in love. He is a safe haven, a place where you can go and be fully who you are. Confess the things that you've put in front of him. Confess of the idols that you've made. Can we sing this song together? It's a song that is super old. All of us know. But I think sometimes in these songs that are older, the heart of what God is trying to say comes across more. And so can we sing this song together? Give us clean hands. And as we sing, let's ask God, what are those idols? And Lord, would you cleanse my heart and my hands so that I can live for you and love you the way you deserve? We bow our hearts.